According to new research, historians have said that the Book of Esther was written in the 4th century BCE. Researchers have detailed that the origin of the book and its authenticity have been heavily debated, with some historians saying that some of the dates and facts don't line up. Interestingly, a digger in Iran has allegedly found the original Book of Esther, detailing that everything is written in pure gold, and saying that the find is estimated to be thousands of years old. The digger who found it didn't release that much information about it, which led some to believe that the finding could have been made by a robber in the area. Those who saw the post did say that it's not rare to find old scriptures and treasures within this area, and that sometimes they're purchased by anonymous bidders, which is why these diggers roam historically important areas in the hopes of finding something of value. One of the problems that people have with these types of finds is that they usually don't end up in the open market, and are sold before historians and researchers can conduct their inspections. The digger though said that the scroll was likely the original Book of Esther, and has solid gold writing. One user said the following: "Have you ever researched the authenticity of this book? My research has led me to believe that all of these ancient books are based on real events, and when that happens it means there has to be an original book. I think that what we have here is the original book. How would you go about faking something like this? How would you add in the gold writing? And how would you make it look this old? For me, this has to be real, because once people realize it's fake, then it will be worthless. Who would go through all of the effort to make something fake?" Well, this user said the following: "A few alarm bells are going off. Why is the person not using gloves to look at this discovery? If this is an original, then firstly it's priceless, and secondly you would think that someone of that faith would use a bit more care when examining this thing. The problem I have with these discoveries is that we get a few photographs, maybe a short video, and then we never see the item again. It's a shame because I think it looks interesting and I'd love to know what it is. Although I don't think it's the original, it doesn't mean that it's not something interesting. Perhaps it's something like a replica. We've seen these all across various ancient civilizations, with ancient Egypt being one of them. Although I think it looks really interesting, I don't think this is an original. Most have agreed that more research needs to be carried out on relics like this in order to come to a conclusive answer. The Mesopotamian flood has been speculated on for centuries, and has been investigated time and time again. The majority of historians assert that the Great Flood occurred during the rise of humanity, and was the source of the biblical tale of Noah's Ark. During excavations in 1928 to 1929, archaeologists at the historical sites of Ur and Kish unearthed flood deposits, which they connected with the flood as according to ancient Hebrew scriptures. Sir Charles Leonard Woolley, a famous British archaeologist, arrived at the scene to investigate further, and it did not take him long to reach his conclusion. It was in his eyes proof of the flood. In an excerpt from his 1954 book, he said the following: "By the time I had written up my notes, I was quite convinced of what it all meant, but I wanted to see whether others would come to the same conclusion. So I brought two of my staff, and after pointing out the facts, asked for their explanation. They did not know what to say. My wife came along and looked and asked the same question, and as she turned away remarked casually, 'Well, of course it's the flood.' The first test pit used by Woolley was tiny, so the following archaeological season he dug up several more pits, one of which being ridiculously large, 75 by 60 feet and 65 feet deep. In this pit he found a deposit of clean water-laid soil up to 11 feet thick. Notably, this evidence of the flood was lacking in several other pits in the area, but Woolley wholeheartedly believed that he'd found proof of the biblical flood. After only a few years, another discovery was made at the third Mesopotamian site, CO.AG, where they found a flood stratum. According to the myth, the Sumerian Noah lived in CO.AG. This flood residue separated the skeletal remains dating around 2950 and 2850 BCE, though no other Mesopotamian sites have any such evidence. Despite an attempt made by these researchers to decide an exact timeline for biblical events, the Bible lacks any specific dates for the flood, only stating the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month. On that day all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. Stories of the Mesopotamian flood are useful since one is able to draw similarities and contrast differences between the flood of Noah's Ark in the Hebrew scriptures and the stories of the Mesopotamian floods, and debate whether they were one and the same. Many scholars through the ages have believed wholeheartedly that the similarities between the two provide irrefutable proof of the biblical flood's existence. As such, the widely accepted view is that the original accounts that appear in Genesis arose in Mesopotamia, and this is further proven by the fact that Mesopotamian accounts of such a great flood outdate the accounts made in the Bible. Furthermore, the Sumerian king list references a great flood. The king list is a very complicated document which has multiple editions. It's thought that it was created at some point in 2100 BCE. The king's list is a report of every monarch and all the dynasties of ancient Mesopotamia from the origin of kingship, which descended from the heaven up until the time it was made. However, researchers have said that the list is flawed. The length of each king's reign is impossibly long, and several early dynasties have glaring discrepancies. Even with these mistakes in mind, the Sumerian king list is a valuable document which has preserved names and bloodlines of real ancient rulers. According to the king's list, the flood destroyed everything, cutting through the dynasties until kingship once again descended from heaven, and the list of rulers continued. The majority of modern believers often choose to ignore the Sumerian king's list completely, stating that the Mesopotamian flood does not fall into agreement with the views of the Genesis flood. Primarily the fact that if the Bible is to be taken seriously, Noah and his family were the flood's only survivors. The king list opposes this view. The problem is that if you ignore the evidence provided by the Sumerian king list, then the findings of Ur and Kish must too be ignored, as they only support claims of a local flood which would have certainly left survivors. The flood, though intense, was not nearly as large scale as the Bible claimed its Genesis flood to have been, and though severely destructive, would not have destroyed every human in its vicinity. The question of whether what Leonard Woolley found was the remnants of the biblical flood, or simply an unrelated natural disaster, is yet to be answered, because there's a lack of modern investigation. The flooding of the southern Mesopotamia was presumably disastrous enough for stories of a great flood to spread throughout the country, and even the ancient world, but because the records we have are so old, and were passed down by word of mouth for centuries before being written down, many details have surely been exaggerated or simply lost to time. The Daripana site has long fascinated researchers, and this is because it's said to be the final resting place of Noah's Ark. Believers who've seen the photographs have said this is the proof they needed, and that these photographs prove that a boat-shaped object now sits on this mountain. Various other images have been taken of the area, helping to fuel theories that more work needs to be done in order to find out what this thing is. A group of researchers claim they found proof that this was in fact once a giant boat. Back on the 25th of April 2010, a press conference was held in Hong Kong, and it was here that the researchers announced they had found remains of Noah's Ark on the mountain, going on to detail that the discovery was made by a team of researchers from both China and Turkey. The discovery was welcomed with open arms by religious communities, with many of them saying that they knew the Ark was on the mountain, but that this is the proof that they'd been waiting for. When the photographs were released, they surprised many people, as it did appear that the team had found large wooden structures. One scientist even said the following about the discovery. As a scientist, I'm always cautious and somewhat skeptical of bold and spectacular claims, especially when made in defense of the Bible. Yet, as a Bible-believing Christian, the thought of this wooden structure being the remains of Noah's Ark was tantalizing. When the team were grilled by scientists, they said they'd conducted the necessary experiments to come to this conclusion, saying that they had radiocarbon dated some of the wood. Young Wing Chung, one of the researchers, said the following. How can a ship be on a mountain? The only record of a wooden structure on Mount Ararat is Noah's Ark. So up to now I believe this is the most probable explanation. We don't have another explanation. The team also said that when speaking to government officials in Turkey, even they believe their findings, and have said that they too think this is the final resting place of Noah's Ark. The researchers said that once the wood was obtained, it was carbon dated to be over 4,800 years old. Further saying that they invited other scientists to come and look at their results. Some skeptics though are definitely not won over, and have said that some of these tests don't prove that this is Noah's Ark. Another scientist was critical of the radiocarbon dating, saying that more tests need to be done, and that the whole event sounded like a setup. Although various scientists and researchers spoke out about this, the team carried on with their findings, and even published a paper titled Exploration Team Successfully Venture Inside 4,800-year-old Wooden Structure on Snow-Capped Mount Ararat. Experts and Turkish officials believe the artifact is Noah's Ark. As of right now, many religious people believe that this is the final resting place of Noah's Ark, while scientists have said they've made some points that suggest there's no way this is the Ark. Scientists aren't totally against some of the details of the story though. Some of the most unexplored regions on our planet are mountains. There's some that make it their life goal to conquer these massive structures, whereas others are fascinated with what rests on these natural formations. One of the most difficult things that hikers face when exploring these regions is navigating, and this is due to the overgrown wildlife, impossible to pass terrain, and the overwhelming danger of overcoming one of the biggest obstacles in nature. This has also led many to conclude that there are strange objects that can be found in these regions. Interestingly, in recent years a few researchers have come forward and said that at one point a great flood did happen. Recent discoveries by underwater archaeologists suggest that this event ended up sinking many cities. One such find was made off the coast of Turkey, where researchers found traces of ancient civilizations dating back since the time of Noah. One thing that's interesting is that many civilizations talk about a great flood, and some of these are even documented. Some scientists don't actually doubt that this happened, but have suggested it may not have been as massive as it's made out. For example, one theory is that the Great Flood could have been the flooding of the Black Sea, and researchers have said that rising water levels happened in this region around 7,000 years ago. Again, scientists know that there was an event that sank cities. After all, several underwater ancient cities have been discovered. It's the magnitude of the event that people can't seem to agree on. Woods Hole Oceanic Institution said the following about this alleged flood. Now, a new study in the January 2009 issue of Science Review suggests that if the flood occurred at all, it was much smaller, hardly of biblical proportions. Livu son of Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and Florin Philip and Stefan Constantinescu found evidence that Black Sea water levels rose only 5 to 10 meters around 9,400 years ago, not 50 to 60 meters as previously proposed. The flood would have drowned only around 2,000 square kilometers of land, rather than 70,000 square kilometers. The Hayuboshi forest has been a hotbed of mysterious reports, with the locals saying that stories have been shared for as long as they can remember. It's believed that the legends of the area can be traced back generations, since settlements first arose near the area and discovered the anonymous terror-inducing forest. Claims of vampire entities roaming through the trees, unexplainable lights in the sky that can hover and dance around, demonstrating a peculiar form of intelligence, mysterious sounds of disembodied screams and laughs escaping from the underbush, and countless other claims that have been made over the years, spawning endless legends and reports of mysterious activity that is impossible to explain. Even more odd, however, is the clearing that many of the local residents claim should be avoided. According to local residents, located near the centre of the forest is a circular area that opens up into a large clearing, where no vegetation seems to grow. Although skeptics will often dismiss the story, as aerial photos of the region show that there's no such clearing anywhere throughout the Hoibushu forest, local residents claim that the circular clearing is not visible from the sky, and only becomes visible when a hiker has entered deep into the forest. The clearing is believed to be of supernatural origin, and acts as a portal that leads travellers or other hikers to another dimension, which is often offered as an explanation by the locals as to why it appears to be hidden, and becomes visible when entered by foot. Unfortunately, those who enter the clearing are believed to never return, and become lost in a world completely different to our own. Although a clearing as described by the townsfolk has never been discovered, tourists who happen to hike through the area claim to report sudden feelings of intense anxiety and nausea that progressively gets worse as they travel closer towards the centre of the forest. This forbidding sense of artificial terror and sudden illness manifests in nearly all of those who visit the forest, including tourists who are unaware of the legends and myths surrounding the region. Some hikers have claimed to have spotted mysterious lights hovering over the top of the forest, believing that to possibly be extraterrestrial or supernatural in nature. Extraterrestrial researchers believe that such sightings of unidentified flying objects and the sudden onset of anxiety attacks are evidence of an extraterrestrial origin, as countless witness reports all across the world claim that encounters with extraterrestrial crafts can cause sudden fits of paranoia and panic attacks to manifest from seemingly nowhere. Many often report that when a craft is nearby, whether they are aware of it or not, they will suddenly feel a terrible anxiety and panic overcome them, similar to that experienced in the forest of Hoibushu. One such legend is credited with providing the forest with its name. According to the forest history, a local shepherd by the name of Hoibushu was travelling near the forest alongside 200 sheep, his entire flock of livestock, when he suddenly disappeared along with his 200 sheep. It was originally believed that the shepherd was attacked by a passing thief, who dragged the body of the shepherd deep into the woods and stole the livestock for himself, despite the fact that none of the townsfolk saw a trace of the sheep anywhere in the region, with tracks that disappeared into the forest never to be seen again. Similar stories of mass disappearances of sheep were also reported during the 1600s, across London and nearby shires. Another strange report surrounding the Hoibushu forest was made in 1968, when Emil Bania, a military technician, photographed an image of a massive flying saucer hovering over the tree line of the forest. Bania claimed to have seen the craft hovering for a period of time before snapping a photo and sending it to the local news agency to be published. However, following his sighting, Emil Bania was ridiculed and made the victim of a smear campaign that tried to discredit him as a military technician and ruin his career as a response to his claim of encountering the unidentified flying object. Although many skeptics today continue to doubt the authenticity of the event, another researcher by the name of Alexandru Sivd would also take several images of unidentified flying objects hovering over the forest through the 1960s, with many of the photos predating Emil's encounter in 1968. Using the gathered images, Romanian ufologist Ion Habana, joint author to UFOs Behind the Iron Curtain, conducted his own investigation into the matter and found a number of interesting facts related to the case. After meeting Emil Bonilla twice, once in 1968, immediately after his publication of the images, and then again in 1970 when doing a follow-up investigation, Ion Habana claimed that Emil knew nothing about flying saucers, unidentified flying objects, extraterrestrial encounters or alien reports, showing no interest whatsoever in the topic. Ion Habana believed that Mr. Emil Bonilla merely reported the UFO to the local news under the belief that the craft was possibly invasive or clandestine in its construction, and not that it had any relation whatsoever to extraterrestrials. Though many skeptics continue to believe that Emil was merely hoaxing the event, it's important to note that books on ufology or similar topics were not made available for sale or printing in Romania during the 1960s. Ion Habana also noted that the hoax explanation was completely outlandish, stating that at the time in Romania, there was no possibility of selling documents of any kind to local news agencies, and their publication implied no financial benefit to the author, so it would have been impossible for the photographer to host the images for financial profit. Ion Habana would later reach out to photographic analysis Belgian G. Delcorps to conduct an independent investigation on the image, saying the following: "The analysis of Belgian G. Delcorps is in this respect extremely interesting and instructive, not only by its conclusions, but also by the seriousness and the precision which characterizes it. Unfortunately, Delcorps examined only the first two photographs. He noticed that in picture number 2, the UFO could not be at 85 degrees above the horizon, as stated by Bonilla, but at around 30 degrees only. In the number 1 photograph, it's 20 degrees above the horizon, and the calculable diameter is 22.3 meters, which was obtained by calculations and comparisons with the trees and the solid masses. It left the assumption that the machine on photograph number 2 was within 600 meters of the photographer. It's obviously possible since other calculations gave a value ranging between 300 and 480 meters for the altitude." End quote. So what do you make of these mysterious stories? Be sure to leave your questions and answers in the comment section below, and help us to grow this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.